I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Kevin Ames. So he's an award-winning speaker, author, and expert in leadership, workplace culture, and personal development. Kevin is one of the leading minds and most sought-after speakers in the corporate speaking world. He has enlightened audiences at Coca-Cola, Dow, eBay, FedEx, Virgin, Trains, Liberty Mutual, and Stanford, among many, many others. And he did tell me that none of them are a highlight in his career like speaking here at Call for Health User Conference. So, I really appreciate that, Kevin. So, thank you very much. So, without further ado, you'll take it away.
Thank you. We're going to face a couple of things in our lives. We're going to face opportunities, right? And we're going to face challenges. Anybody seen any challenges just in the last few years in your life at all? Really? I'd heard that everybody here was pretty much just no challenges. Life was just easy. Just absolutely nothing going on. But a couple of you maybe have experienced a challenge here and there. What's interesting about challenges and opportunities is they are mostly a perspective. They're mostly an idea we have in our mind. They're what happens to us, right? And then we make decisions about what those things are. Jim Rohn, legendary business leader, said, while we can't change the circumstances, the seasons, or the winds, we can change ourselves, and therein lies our power. Viktor Frankl, the famous Viennese psychiatrist who was imprisoned by the Germans in the prison camps during the war, discovered something interesting there. He discovered that he did not have to accept the incarceration. He did not have to accept fully the torture that was going on there, the starvation and other things. And he developed, while he was in there, something called the stimulus response model. And if you went through school a little bit, you probably were taught the stimulus response model at one point. What it means is that in our life, certain things happen to us, right? Certain things come at us and stimulate us. Somebody punches us in the nose. Somebody pulls in front of us in traffic. Has that ever happened to anybody? Ever have a bad day driving your car? Things happen to us, and they stimulate us, right? They cause us to almost immediately react back. Somebody punches you in the nose, you tend to punch them right back to create that balance. Somebody pulls in front of you on the freeway, and you start talking to them, don't you? As loud as you can, as though they can hear you. Right? You signal they're number one and stuff, and you're thinking, that's not going to make a difference. Or they can't hear you at all, and they frankly don't care about you. If they did, they wouldn't have pulled in front of you on the freeway, right? So stimulus happens. And what he told us was that there is a space available in between what happens to us and our response to it. Instead of just reacting immediately, we have the ability to create space in between, to pause for a minute and think about it, and choose to react in a more mature way, a more thoughtful way. And that stimulus response model is critical for us to understand as we mature, as individuals and as professionals in business. Can we understand maturity and how to pause and think about what's going on? Consider what's happening in the life of the other person, because it's probably not what we think it is. And that stimulus doesn't have to always be negative. We can pause and create a positive reaction back to that. We can determine the outcome. And that's the key to all of this. It is not the direction of the wind, but the set of the sails that determines where we go. What you have to understand is you're in charge of the sails. You can set the sails so that we can actually go into the wind. I get on an airplane, I fly every week of my life, and we take off into the wind every time. Because that's what creates lift most easily, isn't it? So the idea is that we can choose what we want our organization to be. More than that, we can choose what kind of individual, what kind of person we want to be inside of an organization and in our personal life. And I'm going to challenge you today to think about that. Make some notes, write down some thoughts about some of the things we talk about to see if you can make different decisions, to elevate your life by a conscious endeavor, as Thoreau talked about. Create elevation, really do it well. There's a great story about this concept of choosing what kind of organization we want. The story's about Chris Hurd. Chris was a young father and had 3 young kids, and they had finally got to the age where they felt like they could go to a resort and go on a real vacation. It had been a while. They were a little too young to really enjoy that, but they'd got them up to a point where they thought they could do it. So they'd gone away for 8 days to a really nice resort, had a really great time. They had just got back. It's their first day back, and it's evening now, and it's time to try to get those kids to bed. If any of you had that experience, you know that can be challenging. Right? It takes you 2 days to recover from a good vacation, doesn't it, when you get back? And these kids, of course, they're all excited from the whole process, and it's time for bed. And all of a sudden, we're having a problem with the youngest boy because we can't find Josie. And Josie is critical for this young boy to go to bed because Josie is his stuffed giraffe. And he doesn't go to bed without his stuffed giraffe, Josie. And what we're realizing is that Josie stayed behind at the resort. He's been left behind, right? So Dad realizes this as they're talking, and he sets his boy down. And he says, son, I should have told you this a little bit earlier. Josie asked if he could stay on at the resort a couple of extra days. He said he'd had a long summer with you, and the vacation had been pretty trying for him, and he just wanted a little alone time. And so he asked if he could just stay on for a couple of days. He knew that you'd be understanding, and then he'd be right home. The boy bought the story pretty well and headed off to his bedroom. Dad went the other direction and found his phone, right? And he calls the resort. It only takes one call for him to be put on the line as a young man at the resort who's already found Josie. And he says, yes, sir, I've got him right here. I'm just getting ready to send him back to you. Dad says, hey, would you just do me one favor? Would you take a picture of Josie for me there at the resort and just text it to me so I can show my son? That way he can relax and he'll go to sleep and we'll be good. Kid says, yeah, happy to do it. Takes a picture of him, texts it to him. Dad goes in. He says, hey, just got a picture from Josie. He's having a great time down at the resort. All is well. Kid buys it, goes to sleep. 2 days later, box shows up. Both dad and son are excited to get to the box. As soon as they open it, of course, Josie jumps right out. He's excited to see her boy. But underneath him in the box is a book. And when they take it out, it's a photo album stamped with the logo of the resort. And as they turn each page, it's a picture of Josie at every venue at the resort. There's a picture of him down at the beach. There's another one at the pool. There's a picture of him in the spa, cucumbers on his eyes. They've got him in a room with all the catering of a full meal, sitting there talking to one of the ladies. Right? He's in the restaurant. Every single place that resort offers, this kid has walked around and taken a picture of him actively involved with this thing. And they just enjoy that. Now, something's going on with this young man. Would you agree? When we talk about this idea of engagement, would you call that an engaged employee? Something's happening in that culture that makes that possible, right? People don't have to do that. 2 pictures would have been enough, but that wasn't sufficient here. He wanted to create a dynamic experience for this young boy. What do you think that family will do, by the way? Yeah, about as fast as they can, they'll get back there, won't they? That's extraordinary service. See, you get to decide how you lead people. You get to decide whether the people that you influence are excited about what they do or not. Then they'll do extraordinary things. Let me give you a different view of what you can do. I was speaking at what I was told was the #1 social club in America in a major city back east. Won't tell you the city because they didn't figure out which club it was, which I should actually tell you, but I won't. #1 social club in America is what they told me. The building was built in 1865. We had booked several rooms there. We booked the venue. We had a function catered. We were speaking there for the day and so forth. A big deal. You have to wear jackets and ties there. You can't become a member there unless you have 8 references just to start the interview process. Big deal. They think a lot of themselves. And we enjoyed the venue. It was a great time. So I was leaving there after a couple of evenings. I was leaving to go to Omaha and speak to a group there. When I get into Omaha, I do what I do when I arrive. I had a black jacket, and I was going to take that out and steam it a little bit, see if we could bring it back to life, for the next day. And I opened the suitcase and no jacket. I've left it back at the greatest social club in America. And so I get on the phone with them. Of course, 1 transfer is all it takes for me to get a recording. And so I leave a message, hey, I'd like to be able to get that jacket back, left it in such and such a room, it'd be great if you could get it. So the next day I get a call about half an hour before I'm going to go on stage in Omaha. And it's a young lady from the greatest social club in America. And she says, yes, Mr. Ames, I just want to let you know that we have your blue jacket here, and I just needed to get your credit card information so we can send it back to you. I says, well, first of all, can I get my black jacket back as well? Because that's the one that I left. And we never did get past that. She called it blue the whole time. Why? Because that's what's on the paper in front of her. Right? There's nothing going on up here. It's just whatever's on the paper, whatever the script says is what I'm going to be. Right? And she says, yes, sir, I just need to get your credit card information so I can send it back to you. And I says, hang on, let me see if I understand what we're talking about. We've just spent 2 days there, booked multiple rooms with this resort. Right? Booked the venue, had it catered by you. We've dropped several $1,000s at your club in the last 2 days. And you want me to pay to send my jacket back? Yes, sir, I just need to get your credit card information so I can send you, right? Because that's all the script says. That's it. That's all she can do, right? Can't deal with it. Gave her my credit card number. 10 days later, my jacket arrived in an 8x8 box. Oh. Flat, like this. We took it out, we gave it its last rites. Got another jacket, because that one was done. Isn't it interesting the choices we made? She was not empowered by anyone to understand what's going on. Think of the risk of that. We're an organization that can go back and book that venue every single year if we want to. We're not going to, but we could, right? We would have been anxious to come back, perhaps. Now we won't go back. That's the consequence. Is that a little harsh? Maybe, but you get a shot, don't you? You get a shot to treat us well. And if you don't, if you haven't got everybody prepared, you have that danger of losing that business. So it's an interesting choice, isn't it? We can decide what we're going to be, but we have to be willing to make that decision. I'm in the witness protection program. The question is, have you made the decision? And the decision is important just for you personally. It really isn't even yet about your connection to what you do here. It's about you personally. Have you decided yet to be what you're supposed to be? What you know you're supposed to be? Love Shakespeare's words. That great question, right? To be or not to be, that is the question. And that is the question. When you were young, you had a sense of this. When you were young, you felt like you had skills and abilities and all kinds of things going on. And you thought, you know what? I'm going to go out in the world with this stuff. I'm going to go out and make a difference. I'm going to change the world. So I got this magic going on inside of me. People were complimentary of you because you had skills, art, music, athletics, or something. And we thought we had all this stuff going on. Isn't that right? Do you remember being young? Anybody remember being young? We were happy back then. Anybody remember happiness? Yeah? We thought we had the world by the tail. And then I'll tell you what happened to me, and maybe a similar thing happened to you, but I got to about 17 years old, and I discovered my parents were not going to pay for the rest of my life. It was a shock for a while. But then I realized, if I'm going to drive a car, if I'm going to go to school, if I'm going to date a little bit, I better have some money, I guess. So I'm going to go get this little job. I'll go get this little job for a minute just to make sure I get that taken care of. But that's going to be for a minute because I am going to go out and take over the world with all this stuff. So I take that little job. And that's what we do, isn't it? We get to a place where we need to do that. We've got to have that security. We've got to pay the bills. Just enable us before we go out and get this thing done. And then we wake up one day and we're 60. And we still work there. I mean, the building's different and the title's changed. We probably make a little more money, but fundamentally it's no different. We're still paying for the car and the dates and the kids and all that other stuff that we've accumulated now, and we can't get away from it because we've created that obligation. But we haven't ever left to pursue that stuff inside of us. But what's interesting about growing up is you discover that it isn't about chasing some dream that's off in the distance, but much rather about making decisions to love what you're doing now. Connect purpose to what you're doing today. Apply the passion you have in your life to what you're doing today. It's just a choice we make. See, that's the freedom of all this. We can change ourselves, and therein lies our power, and that is the power. I can choose to love what I'm doing today. I can choose to love the people I'm around today. I can choose to make a difference with this stuff. When we start to do that, we start to have a place where people feel engaged, where people feel excited to get up in the morning and do something. When they can start to make that personal connection to their purpose, framed by the noble cause purpose of the organization, then we get some difference. Lou Gerstner was the CEO of IBM. He says, what I learned there was that this idea of culture isn't just part of the game. Culture is the game. Culture is what it is about. And what we've discovered is that ultimately culture will determine the success of your organization. It will either enable or inhibit the achievement of your goals. And what are cultures made up of? This is the interactive part. People. Cultures are made up of people. We believe that a successful organization has a vibrant community of people. That a culture is just simply a vibrant community of people that have three qualities. I'm going to ask you, don't raise your hands, but I'm going to ask you if you have these qualities. And I want to also have you think about whether you're influencing other people to have these qualities. Do you have an impact on a team or anybody else in your life? Can you cause people to feel these things? Three characteristics of people who are part of a vibrant community. The first one is they love what they do. They love what they do. I have to ask myself the question, do I love what I do? Have I made the decision to love what I do? Because that's what it is. It's not about waiting for something to happen to you so that you like it. It's about you creating it. I'm going to choose to love what I do today. I may want to change and do something else in the future, that's fine, but don't shortchange yourself in the organization you're at today. Choose today to love what you do and apply your passion to it. And it's just a choice you make. And people connect to this kind of a purpose first, and then they support the organization's purpose thereby. But this is the idea, making a decision to be what I'm supposed to be in the role that I'm in today, with the resources I have. Not complaining about the things I don't have, but taking advantage of the things I do. That's the key to this. Can we cause other people to love what they do? Can I influence them to do that? Second, they love who they do it with. That's the people inside of the organization. All of them, boardroom to lunchroom. I love who I do it with. Now let me be clear about this. This is a proactive stance. Proactivity is the word that Stephen Covey brought to us from science. It's the first habit of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Proactivity means I take personal responsibility for the outcome. Personal responsibility. And that's the idea here. It isn't about going to a place and waiting to see if people treat you well, and then you decide whether you like them or not. You decide before you get there, you're going to like them. I'm going to decide to like my team today. Abraham Lincoln said, I don't like that guy very much. I'm going to get to know him better. You know why that's interesting? Because everybody that you know well, you like and trust. Right? When you really get to understand who they are, you get past all of those idiosyncratic problems that you see them have. And you start to like them more when you get to depth, right? We choose to like them. We don't wait till they earn that from us. Is that clear? It's about being proactive again. It's about taking personal responsibility. And can you influence other people to have that same attitude? Can you cause people to like other people? Not wait to see if they qualify, but just choose today. I'm going to like my team. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Because I love what I do, and I choose to like who I'm doing it with too. And I'm going to do that, and I'm going to inspire other people to do the same thing. And finally, they love who they do it for. And they get very clear that they do it for the customer, not for the organization. Not for the CEO, not for the board of directors, not even for each other. We do this for the people we serve. The purpose of business, according to David Lapham, who spends his entire life focused on purpose and leadership, he says is to make a contribution to the well-being of other people. That's not a bad life goal either, is it? To make a contribution to the well-being of others. That's why we have a business, and that's why we have each other. And that's what we should be thinking about. If I worry most of the time about making a contribution to your well-being, I don't get lost in myself very much. If I spend all day hoping you make a contribution to my well-being, I'm going to have problems with that, aren't I? Because you may not get around to it. You might be focused on your own life. Imagine that. So it's a change of paradigm. What does that mean? A change of perspective. I start to look at the world through a different lens. See, we don't see the world the way it is. We see it the way we are. And we can change that and look at it differently. We become proactive. There's 3 goals we have here. 3 things we want people to have as we start to lead them in the right way. The first one is we want them to become proactive. That means they own it. I will take personal responsibility for my life and for the outcomes of my life. I will no longer blame my grandparents for the genes that I was born with, right? They certainly influence me, they do. I'm short or tall because of that, right? But I'm not going to, there's nothing more common than people overcoming the things that we were born with. So I'm going to choose to not blame my life on all this junk that I was born with. I'm just going to make the best of it, right? I'm going to really make a difference because what I have is enough. I was standing at Salt Lake City Airport. I'm from Salt Lake City. It's where our global offices are. And I'm doing what I'm supposed to do at the airport. I'm a businessman. And I'm standing out in the aisle, where people are rushing to get to their gates. I'm already at mine, so I've lost interest in everybody else, right? And I'm on my phone. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm a businessman. I'm at the airport, and I'm on my phone. That's what we all do. And I'm standing too far out in the aisle, so I'm in everybody's way. So I'm really getting it done. I've checked all the boxes. And as I'm standing there, I feel something go behind me, about my knee level, which is weird. And I'm thinking, well, small kid, or maybe it's a dog, There's so many dogs in the airport now, it feels more like a kennel, actually, than an airport. I'm thinking it's got to be something like that. So just got, curious, I just turned to see what it is, and it's a guy on a skateboard. He's going across to put something in the garbage across the way, and then he comes back right behind me again, goes over, and there's a pillar right over here, and then right next to it is the gate where we're going to go through the door. The pillar is out away from the wall and the windows. He goes in, tucks himself in right behind that pillar, and just settles in right there. And what was interesting is the reason he was on the skateboard. The reason he's on the skateboard is because he doesn't have any legs. He just has two little feet that come out of his hips about right here. And he doesn't have arms either, really. He just has two kind of stumps of arms, and he has a little thumb on each one. And people are taken aback now when they see that, as am I. And what's interesting is I watch him tuck in behind that pillar because he doesn't want to really draw attention to himself. I scan back over the people that are just sitting here waiting for our flight. And there's an older couple sitting right in front of me. Now the woman that's right in front of me is leaning on her husband's shoulder and weeping. Just weeping, okay, uncontrollably, having just seen this. Now, my nature is I'm curious about life and people and things. And so when I get off the phone, I go beeline right over there and tuck in behind that pillar. And I says, hey, I'm Kevin. He says, hi, Kevin, I'm Chris. And I put my back against the wall, slid down to the floor where he was. And I says, Chris, you're a public speaker, aren't you? He says, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am. I said, me too. That's what I do. What do you love about it? He says, I love changing lives. I love going out and teaching people. I love moving and causing them to get a different thing. I says, what's the theme of what you're talking about? He says, my theme is if I can, you can. Wow. 36-year-old Chris Cook, friend of mine now. As we talked about a lot of things associated with life. He's completed marathons. He runs a farm. He's a world-renowned speaker. He's an amazing guy, right? But as we talked, we didn't discuss disability at all because he didn't bring any of mine up. Because he didn't have any. Happiest guy I've ever met. He's got his life under control. And we're looking at him thinking he's having a problem. But you know what's interesting is he is maximizing all of his potential. He's using every inch of it. It was embarrassing to me as we flew how much he got done on the plane and how much I did not with 2 arms and 2 legs. And it occurred to me, I've got to be more. I've got to do more. I've got to make better choices. I've got to stop whining about what I don't have and get busy doing something with what I do. Does this make sense to you? Okay, because people like that put you to shame when you get around those kind of people. You start to discover, I am not actualizing myself at all. So we've got to become proactive, and we want to help other people become proactive, taking personal responsibility for the outcome. No longer my grandparents' fault, no longer my parents' fault, it's not my wife or my boss's fault. It's all now me. I'm going to make decisions for myself. When people become strong that way, we want them to move to the next level, which is synergy. We want them to be synergistic. There's another one of the 7 habits. Synergy is just a high level of collaboration, but it has passion connected to it. It's causing people to really want to do exciting things. Synergy means we choose to work together because we like to. When you build a team like that, they're almost unstoppable. It's how the major changes in the world take place, because of groups of people that choose to have this kind of energy associated with their work. And so they come together and just solve things and create things and innovate and move things in dramatic ways. And finally, they become efficacious. How many of you were hoping I would talk about efficacy today? Thinking this morning, geez, I hope he talks about that. Efficacy was studied by Albert Van Der at Stanford a few decades ago. Efficacy means this. You have the power to produce a desired result. You have inside you the power to produce a desired result. I had a few minutes late last night. I was watching a little bit of tennis. Roger Federer was playing last night, right at the end of his very dominant career. He's considered the greatest tennis player of all time. And at the peak of his career, he had efficacy. He knew when he showed up at a tennis tournament that he was going to win that tournament, and so did everybody else. And he did, all the time. Won more majors than anybody else, but he had efficacy. He knew he was the best player in the world. And it was okay with him that he was the best player in the world. You understand that concept? He wasn't arrogant about it. He just knew he was. He had paid the price to be it. He had decided to be. And when he got there, it was okay with him that he was good. And it can be okay with you too. Again, we don't have to get it all over each other. But it's absolutely fine to be great if you decide to be. If you decide to take personal responsibility, work well with other people, and create this power inside you, you can accomplish anything you want. And it's okay to do it. Most people are held back by the limitation that it's not okay. But it is. You can choose it any time you want. And folks, it's time. It's time to choose it. Go ahead. You're old enough now to choose it, okay? Don't let the world give you all of these other kinds of perspectives and paradigms about limitation and humility and all this stuff. Humility is a good thing. You can behave with humility, but it doesn't stop you from achievement. Jim Collins in Good to Great found that the greatest leaders in the world had 2 qualities. This extraordinary humility, but this tremendous drive to be the very best. You can have both. Right? You just don't have to be arrogant about it. But you can be self-assured. You can have these qualities and it's all good. Here's what's more important. You really should have the ability to cause this in others. Your life should really be about that. It's not about you rising to the top. It's about you helping other people. That's when we become powerful. Marilyn Carlson of the Carlson Companies knows something about success. And she says that successful organizations should be great places where great people can do great work. It's an awful lot of greatness from 9:30 in the morning here in Florida, isn't it? That's a lot of greatness. Here's the question. How many of you believe in greatness? This is interactive again. Really? So some of you are raising your hands. You really believe that people can be great? Do you really? Because, we have a lot of conversations in the hallways about people we don't think are great, don't we? We sit over coffee and talk about people we don't think are great. Isn't that right? Anybody know Magic Johnson? He was the real best player ever. Amazing basketball player in his day, right? He became the coach of the Lakers after he played for the Lakers, and they won several championships. He became the coach. Do you know how long that lasted? 15 games. And they ended that. Mutual. They had both figured out very quickly he could not lead other people. He was absolutely the best on the floor playing. He could see the floor like nobody else. But he couldn't instill in other people that same vision, that ability. Didn't work out. He wasn't the right person to lead. It's interesting, isn't it? Alex Ferguson, on the other hand, was a mediocre soccer player. Pretty good, actually. Pretty good. On the pro level, pretty decent player. But he became the greatest soccer coach in history. Man United's coach for 20 years, just moved him to a whole other level. He's the reason they are what they are, Alex Ferguson. But it wasn't about his playing ability. There was something else going on. His ability to affect others and create others. Traded David Beckham right as he was peaking. Sold him. He had David Beckham. Right as he was peaking, sold him to another team. People were livid. But he took the money from David Beckham and bought 4 more David Beckhams. Took the money from those 4 guys just as they were getting to their peak, sold them and bought 8. Became the greatest organization soccer ever, 1 year in and year out. Because he understood what was going on. It's called leadership. The ability to make big decisions. Give up David Beckham and go get 4 of them and start to build. Sometimes we don't reward people that are good at building strength around them. We tell them, build strong teams. And when we do, then we let them go and we put the person who created into the leadership position. Again, we kill it off. So we got to start valuing people that can build, not just achieve solo, right, as we go forward. This idea of demanding is interesting. She says, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to dig deep down inside myself and make that decision. It's going to be an internal decision. So I grew up in the Rocky Mountains of Utah, and I had what I call a quote-unquote opportunity when I was just a wee lad to go up into the mountains of Utah, work with a friend of mine whose father raised sheep. He had sent us up into the mountains to work with his sheep herder. Imagine our excitement. I knew in 10 minutes I didn't want to be a sheep herder. Didn't really want to be there, but there we were. And it was interesting because when I looked back on the experience as an adult, I discovered that the job of the sheep herder is incredibly similar to the job of the leader in business. The job of the sheep herder is simple. It's to get the sheep to the upper pasture in the summer. There's an abundance of food there. The temperatures are cool. It's good for the sheep. The job of the leader is to get people to the top of the mountain too, isn't it? To cause them to elevate the quality of their lives by a conscious endeavor, to rise, to become better. Now, the only way that a sheep herder can figure out how to do this is to get on a big horse, to set high above those sheep, and then get around behind them and start to drive them towards the goal. Now, he enlists the use of a barking dog, doesn't he? To elicit fear in the sheep, to nip at their heels lest they wander off after their own interests. And then he drives them. And invariably, some will wander away into the bush, and he has to go gather them up. And about the time he gets back, others have wandered away in another direction. He has to go gather them up. And it takes an entire week to get those sheep to the upper pasture. But on Friday morning, we arrive. There we are. The sheep herder, the horse, the dog are filthy, tired, miserable experience all in all. But not for the sheep. When the sheep see that upper pasture on Friday morning, they say to themselves, wow. We recorded it. That's what they actually said. Look at that food. Look at that. That's going to last all summer long. Can you feel this cool breeze? I'm going to get this wool off of me. What a great place, Somebody would have communicated with us about this. We would have come up here by ourselves. They felt compelled to drive us here. When I got older, I went to a different part of the world and there were shepherds there. Shepherds have the same job primarily, but they do it in an entirely different way. In that part of the world, there are many flocks and many shepherds, and in the evening they come together into a common corral for defense. 2 remain while the others rest. In the morning, one at a time, each shepherd will open the gate to the corral and call for his sheep, and we learn 4 really interesting things. First, shepherds walk at the same level as the sheep. Second, they also have a dog, but the dog was raised with the sheep and is friend to them and defends against predators. Third, sheep do not follow because they're stupid. The only sheep that leave the corral are those that hear their shepherd's voice. And fourth, shepherds lead from the front. Shepherd simply calls for his sheep and begins to walk to the upper pasture. And the sheep follow after him because they are so well cared for. They want to be where that shepherd is. And we're not talking about sheep and shepherds, are we? This is a different kind of leadership, isn't it? There's an old verse that says there was a shepherd that did live, and held his thoughts as high as were the mounts, whereon his sheep did hourly feed him by. We have to change the way we think, which will change the way we feel. Those two will combine to change the things we do, and we'll start to get results. We're faced with 2 challenges as individuals and companies. We have 2 sets of values going on most of the time. Think of it. The first set of values are called values of expression, the things I talk about valuing. The second are called values of behavior, the things I actually take action on. Here's a personal question for each of you. I'd like you to participate in the answer, but do it carefully. How many of you would like to lead a healthy, energetic lifestyle? Let's be honest with each other now. Some of you just kind of wait until I look at you and then you raise your hand. Others are still shopping online. Right? So a whole bunch of hands went up. Healthy, energetic lifestyle, we agreed? Good idea. So what that means is, what we'll find in 2 weeks, we've arranged for a video company actually to follow you folks around for 2 weeks, 24/7. What I'm going to find, everybody that raised their hand who had values of expression, I want to lead a healthy energy, I'm going to find that you're eating right and exercising every day, sleeping the proper number of hours, managing stress effectively, having deep conversations with the people you love, and doing all things associated with leading a healthy, energetic lifestyle. That's what I'm going to find, aren't I? Aren't I? Yeah. How many again? How many wanted to lead a healthy, energetic lifestyle? Yeah, that's what we're doing, aren't we? See, values of expression, I want to lead a healthy, energetic lifestyle. Values of behavior, just not right now. Just not today. A little tired. I didn't sleep that much last night. A little too much to eat, a little too much to drink last night. A lot of stress right now, in my life. No, I can't get to it right now. But someday, when I'm so old I can't move, I'm going to relax and pursue all this stuff and be calm. It's an interesting thing. The Greeks studied happiness. Greeks wanted to understand happiness. They determined originally, their hypothesis was that happiness has to have something to do with feeling good. It's about feeling good. This gets better in a minute. It's about feeling good. And as they looked at it, they discovered, no, that's not it. Because there's a number of things we can do to cause ourselves to feel good, but our life isn't actually good. So what they discovered was something called eudaimonia. How many was hoping for both efficacy and eudaimonia? Woe unto the liar, for he will not be pushed, pulled, nor dragged, but thrust to a watery grave. Eudaimonia means human flourishing. How much time do you spend thinking about whether you're flourishing or not? How much time do you spend thinking about whether you're helping other people flourish or not? Eudaimonia means human flourishing. Here's what they discovered. It is more important to be good and to do good than to feel good. More important to actually be good and to do good than to feel good. When I'm home in Salt Lake City, I have a lovely place. I have a nice deck and it looks up to the Rocky Mountains. It's a great place to spend an evening. And when I sit out there, I feel very good. And that's one of my options. The other option is I can go over to my home, or to my mother's home, where she's dying of dementia now. We have full-time care for her, and it's a slow process, frustrates her and us. And I promise you, it's a very difficult evening. A lot of you have experiences in that direction. You understand it. It's boring. It's difficult. We're on about a 10-minute rotation where her mind resets. We're off to the same conversation. And I owe her that because she fed me when I was a child when I couldn't. She did some stuff for me, and it's payback time, right? But it isn't fun until I'm driving home. And then it feels very good to me. And the reason for that is it's very clear that I was both being and doing good. And that causes me then to feel good. It's the feeling good on the other side of that causes that to happen. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, I wouldn't give a fig for the simplicity on this side of complexity, but I'd give my right arm for the simplicity on the other side of complexity. How many of you are like me? The first time I heard that, I didn't have a clue what that meant. Thank you for being honest. The only honest man in the building. Raises his hand on every question, no matter what. Sometimes before I even finish it. I didn't understand what that was, so I had to stop reading. I read that in the book. I never actually got back to that book again, by the way. Because I read to learn, not to finish. And I'd encourage you to do the same thing. But I read that statement. It's not about the simplicity on this side of complexity. What I want is the simplicity on the other side of complexity. So I started to think about what does that mean? And I thought about when I was just a young boy. I was out in the country, so we started driving things pretty early on. But I remember watching my parents and other people driving tractors and trucks and things like that. How easy is that? Just get out of my way. Give me the keys. I'm ready to go. But then when you actually sit down, what happens? You hold the key in too long, don't you? The first time you turn that car on, right? You grind that engine. And then you can't decide how do I do those pedals, right? And what are all these mirrors for? They're not even pointed at me. Women solve for that, though, don't they? You get in a woman's car, all the mirrors point. You can see yourself at home. I don't even know what those are for. No offense, ladies. But you do eat breakfast and put your makeup on and read books when you're driving to work. It's a strange thing. So what happened is I discovered this process that it looked incredibly easy. It looked simple on this side of it. But when I started to drive, it wasn't. I had to be aware of all this stuff. You make about 1 million decisions, and that is not an exaggeration, is it? When you drive. Just backing up, enough. It's scary by itself. Now think about it. You drive places and you have no concept of what you've done, right? You couldn't remember it if you had to. You've arrived at the simplicity on the other side of complexity, haven't you? You've gone right through it to the other side. But we don't pay the price to get to that in all things. But we're supposed to. We're supposed to. We're supposed to get to this place where we can manage it and keep it simple. You familiar with Henry David Thoreau? Thoreau's one of the great American philosophers, lived in the 1840s, most famous for the 1840s, where he conducted an experiment right in the middle of his life. He lived in an area around Concord, Massachusetts, and he's famous for this experiment. He went out about a mile into the woods outside of Concord onto the property of a friend of his, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and built out there a small one-room shack on the shore of a small lake called Walden Pond. Moves into the shack and lives out in the wilderness for 2 years and 2 months. And he went there for a reason. He said, I went to the woods because I wished to live my life deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see what they had to teach, and not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. You're saying, this is ridiculous for this early in the morning. Where's all this stuff coming from? Right? Not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived, but so many people are not living, and they're old. And he wanted to make sure that didn't happen. He wanted to be focused on the power of his life. But he wrote from Walden Pond messages to all of us. And one of those phases when he was writing, he said to us, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. He was telling us how to live our life, and how to create quality and really enjoy it. He said, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. And then his friend, Ralph Waldo Emerson, wrote an essay in response and said, one simplicity would have sufficed. So we can even overdo that, can't we? But the idea is to get there. The idea is to get there. Get to a place where we can understand what it is that's going on. Apply the correct principles to it. Learn how to shepherd people. Cause them to feel so good about you, they will follow you. That's what leadership is about. Causing that to happen. You can't drive people, but you can cultivate greatness in people. It's the law of the harvest, and you cannot disobey that. This isn't like school. You can't cram with people. You have to plant in proper season and in good soil. Then you have to nurture, then you harvest at the right time. And it's a law, it's a principle. You can't break it. There's nothing you can do but break yourself against it if you try to go against it. But it will win. Principles never move. They're fixed and immovable, like the North Star. You can navigate to them. But you first have to know what they are. And when you do, you can take action on them or not. And it's up to you. But if you don't, you're wasting a lot of your life, aren't you? Because the more principles I adhere to, the more things I behave around that are correct, the better quality my life is and the greater influence I have over other people. It's called leadership. John Maxwell, one of the prolific speakers and authors of our time, agrees with us that leadership equals influence, full stop. That's all it is. People will be influenced by you, for good or bad. One of the questions you have to ask yourself is, which is it? What is the influence that they're experiencing because of me? Leadership begins within. Leadership is a decision you're going to make, but you've got to decide to understand it first. And it might not be the current understanding you have. You may have to deepen that. You might have to arrive at a different place to understand this concept of influence. That you have got to be something in order to influence something. People are going to be impressed by who you are, not what you say. And we tend to think opposite of that. We think we can just talk people into thinking we're leaders, but over time, that won't happen. It's going to come through behavior. And if we can make that decision, start to do this, then we're going to start to have an influence on that employee's experience, that particular employee. It's going to be unique to them, by the way. You can't do the same thing with everybody. How many have more than one child? Yeah? Condolences, I do too. And had to raise them all 4 different. Did you have that? Right? All 4 were different, which is unfair and unreasonable in my view, but that's the way they came. And I had to make adaptations to each one. They did not adapt to me. Did you find that? Did any of you remember when we were young, we played with each other and we played with everybody? Anybody remember this? We hadn't been trained yet to judge your haircut or the shoes you're wearing or make decisions like that, right? So we just played with everybody. When do we lose all this stuff? We actually are crafted to do it right, and then we get trained out of it somehow. We start to buy into it. It's nonsensical. We got to get back to that. I think when there's somebody talked to us about being childlike, that's probably what they meant. Go back to this purity, right? Give people a break. You know that if you came to understand who that person was, you would care for them. Think about Hallmark card videos. Think about Olympic videos. You ever watch the Olympics and watch those videos about that little Russian gymnast that you've never heard of? And you thought she was the enemy, and then you watch her video and you're weeping and you hope she wins the gold medal. Walked all the way across Siberia just to practice every day, all that stuff, right? You get behind anybody. There's a video behind everybody. You get to know what that is. You'll like those people. And you'll give them help, energy, and everything they want. It's just we don't take the time to get to know them. We judge a lot, right? Can't do that because we're influencing their experience. This experience that they have determines their engagement level. Whatever I'm doing for my team here is going to cause them to either choose to engage or not to engage. That's what's going to happen. And I'm going to have an influence on that. Now, they should be strong enough to make that decision themselves, but I am going to influence it as my leadership position and as a culture. We have an environment and we have a culture, and we're going to help influence what's going on. Engaged people choose to come together. See, what we do is we start out as dependent. As children, we're dependent on things, and then we start to move towards independence. 2, 3, 4-year-olds, you've experienced all of those, right? All that is an expression of, I want to be independent now from mom. Right? Well, adults have that same process. But what we should arrive at is interdependence. That means when we arrive at maturity, we want to work together and are willing to do it. And we make adjustments. We give up a little bit of our ego to do that, to listen more closely. Covey taught us to seek first to understand, then to be understood. Seek first to understand. That causes us to have to listen to your ears bleed longer than you want to, because you're trying to seek to understand. Notice he didn't say gain knowledge, then seek to be understood. He said seek first to understand. There is a difference between knowledge and understanding. Most leaders give knowledge to people right away and expect them to be able to behave well with it. And they don't, because they don't understand the knowledge. Am I clear here? How many of you drive a lot, drive cars? You're on the highways with people that have knowledge but no understanding. Is that not right? Isn't that accurate? Right? They have knowledge. They just no understanding about what to do with that knowledge. It's about understanding. See, you can't just talk at people's head and provide knowledge all the time and expect to get results. It's not going to happen. But when they understand it deeply, they'll probably pass you up. But most of us don't know how to convey that. We don't know how to do it well. We can cause people to get to this place because that's what's going to determine the success as we go forward. David Lappin says it is the character of the leader that determines the outcome. Your character, who you authentically are. Okay? It isn't what you say or even what you do, although what you say has to become what you do long enough that it becomes what you are. Not enough just to be doing it. It has to become what you are. And when you become that, when your character is rich, then you're going to be dynamic. Then you're going to have tremendous influence over people. 2 things are going to be necessary. Write these down and master them. Effective communication and exemplary behavior. Think about the person that's had the greatest influence on your life from the day you were born to today. That person, that one. Think about who that is. Greatest influence on your life. For how many was that your mother? Mom? Dad? Grandparents? Relatives? Dynamic business leader? Really? Very rare. One hand out of every 3 audiences about is a business leader. It's appropriate that it's a relative. You're around them. You're born with them, right? They should be the strongest influences around. And other times we are impacted by others, but that's fairly rare. But it's because of this, isn't it? It's really who they were, isn't it? When you really think about it, it's how they behaved with you. It wasn't what they said. You saw the behavior, didn't you? And then you decided if you were going to listen or not. It's about who you actually are. You can't fake that. You have to choose to become. And you know what's cool is you can choose to become. You can choose to become more. You can choose to be just as great as you want to be. But it's up to you. Then what you say will have currency to it. Then it will matter. If we don't do that, it's not going to happen at all. We're going to have to focus on other things. How many of you know who Theo Epstein is? Yeah? A few sports fans in the room. Theo Epstein is going to go down in history as the greatest general manager in baseball of all time. He did some amazing things, worked miracles in some ways. Just as a young man in his 20s, there was a baseball team in the major leagues that were struggling to win World Series. Apparently there's a baseball team in Boston, and they were struggling to win World Series. They made a dramatic mistake decades ago. They traded a young baseball player to the New York Yankees. I think his name was Babe something. Babe Ruth, maybe. Apparently he was quite a baseball player. Maybe the best of all time. And they called it the curse of the Bambino. When they traded him to the New York Yankees, they never won a World Series after that. They'd given it to the Yankees. The Yankees went on to win almost 30, right? And what Boston didn't understand was it had nothing to do with the curse of the Bambino. The Yankees are just better. That's just all there is to it. Right? But they thought it was the curse, right? So they'd gone a long time. And they decided they've got to change something. What is interesting about the Yankees and Manchester United and the All Blacks in New Zealand and the Australian cricket team, Canadian hockey teams, is that they have an expectation of winning championships. And they build cultures around the expectation. When you come and play with those teams, you're going to toe the line or not, but we're going to win here. We're going to have the best environment, we're going to win, right? Create that culture. Well, when Epstein went to the Boston Red Sox, he told the organization that's what we're going to do, and he took them away for a 3-day retreat. Now think of this. He took them away for a 3-day retreat. They didn't talk about baseball at all. They spent the first 2 days talking about how they will create the greatest environment in all of baseball. We will have the greatest environment, physical and otherwise, in all of baseball. And then on the third day, they talked about character. All day, just character. He says, I've identified 4 ball players on this team that have it. And I'm going to build the rest of the team around people that also have it. I'm going to go get other ball players that have it. I'm going to get coaches that have it. And if we have people that don't have it, they aren't going to be here very long. We're going to build around character, and that will take care of everything else. And I think you know the story. Boston went on and won a World Series and then won a couple of more. Because they've now built an environment and a culture that expects it. They've now understood how to get past baseball, because they could play baseball really well. They just couldn't finish. Something was wrong with the culture, but they got through it. Because they didn't focus on the execution of ground balls and hitting. They built around character and a great environment that caused people to believe they could do it, and then they broke through and did it, and then they started to replicate it. Well, there was another team that was having some trouble winning World Series too. The Chicago Cubs hadn't won a World Series in 108 years. It's a long time. Even their fans would help them lose, given the opportunity. It was a tough situation over at Chicago, and they thought, if he did that over there, maybe he could do it over here. And so they went and made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he went over to be the general manager of the Chicago Cubs. Now here's what's interesting about leadership is there's leaders that can cause teams to do things while they're standing over them, aren't there? I can drive my team to get the results while I'm standing here. But the second I'm not, they're dead in the water. There's other kinds of leaders that cause people to be excited and inspired to do things. And so while that leader's around and supported, they'll do things. But when that leader leaves, it doesn't happen either. But there's a third kind of leader who actually creates a different kind of place. And when that leader leaves, that team goes on to continue to excel or even excel in greater ways. They're not limited. And that's what happened in Boston. They won World Series without him being the general manager. So it was no longer dependent on that leader. Now they understand that it's about them. Well, when he went to Chicago, he took them away on a 3-day retreat. Imagine that. And they spent the first 2 days talking about environment. He said, we will have the best environment in all of baseball. I challenge you, go Google search the facilities that the Chicago Cubs have today. You won't believe it. The dressing rooms, the workout rooms, unbelievable quality. They have the best environment in all of baseball. And then he spent the last day talking about character. He says there's 4 players on this team that have it. And I'm going to get other players in here that have it and other coaches that have it, and it'll take care of itself. And you know what the story turned out to be. They went on and won a World Series. And he talked about this, and he says, you know, it's interesting. When people accomplish things they didn't think they could, it has something to do with connection. There's something going on with the connection they have with each other and with the team and with the organization. There's something about the connective tissue that's going on there, decisions that they're making to be one unit. That's what's causing this to take place. It's an interesting thing. The story was told to me at Michigan State. I was conducting some sessions for Michigan State. At the end of one session, we were just interacting with this group, and my father had asked if he could just tell us a story real quick. And this was part of that story, but the story that he was telling us was about his son and an experience that his son had had. And it led us kind of to this place to understand these principles we've been teaching for a long time. It's really how most of my stories actually arrive, as people share with me what's happened to them. But he says, you know, we saw this exemplary behavior in a guy at Stanford. He says, my son has just been accepted to play baseball at Stanford. Now, this is a father who has coached Little League, this kid all the way coming up and boom. Now he's been scholarship to play baseball at Stanford. This is a big deal, right? And to play baseball at Stanford, a couple things have to be true. First, you have to be a pretty good baseball player. And second, you have to get some grades, right? So this is a pretty good kid. And he's excited to go to Stanford. And one of the things he's excited to do is meet a kid named Nico Horner, who's one of the 4 or 5 best baseball players in the country. He plays there. He's a senior at Stanford. And the dad says, let me tell you about our experience. He says, we fly out, and we're both excited. And we get to Stanford, and we get into the locker room, and my son's putting on his practice uniform for the very first time. You know, we're just trying to take it all in. It's just an amazing place. The rest of the team's all out. And he says, we walk down that hallway, and we come into the dugout there at the Stanford Stadium, Stanford Cardinal. Right? And we're just looking at the dugout, and then we walk up the steps, and there we are on that immaculate field. All the players are out on the field playing catch, getting warmed up. Coaches are around the batting cages. Just an amazing setting. And he says, and I noticed something happen. One of the players out on the field that's warming up drops his gear and comes jogging over to me. Looks me right in the eye, shakes my hand, introduces himself, then introduces himself to my son. Then he takes my son and goes out and he starts introducing him to all the players on the field and integrating him right into the team. Note that he didn't haze him. He came over and he got him. And he introduced himself to his father. Then he takes this kid and he says, get out here, let's get play catch. Started playing catch with him, got him integrated. In 10 minutes, he was part of the Stanford Cardinal baseball team that fast. And it turns out that kid was Nico Horner. He was the one that dropped his gear as soon as he saw this new kid come. And we find out that that's just who Nico Horner is. That's what he does. There's no hazing at Stanford. We care for the members of our team. They're a member of the team immediately. We're going to integrate them right now. This kid is just made this way. And his father's got kind of tears in his eyes as he's telling us this story. He says, I'm so impressed with this kid and how amazing he was. He says, you know what's interesting about the story is a week ago, and this is way back when we were at Michigan State, but he says 1 week ago, Major League Baseball held its draft. And because of some trades, the Chicago Cubs had the very first pick in the Major League draft. And with the very first pick, they chose Nico Horner from Stanford. The general manager who builds things around character chose the player that had it. There were about 6 other kids that had better numbers than he did in college, but not more character. Because that general manager is serious about finding these people, and he understands what it is. Isn't that interesting? That's what leaders do. They discover these people, they find out who they are, and they build around this concept of character. Here's an example of what I mean in business about it. There's a young lady come up to me after another presentation. She says, I got to tell you about my dad. He's a CEO of this medium-sized company, and says they were thriving. They were doing really well until about 2008, 2009. Apparently something happened back on those 2 years. It was a little bit difficult or something. And then they started to have some money trouble. Of course, they've got to cut costs, and the only thing that you think about when you start thinking about cutting costs in big ways is you think about people, right? That's our first big expense, but that's not what his values were. And that troubled him. And so he decided to look at it differently. He started thinking about, what could we do? How could we cut costs inside the company? One of the things they came up with is, well, we hire a service to clean our building. We could drop that. When they looked at the numbers, that was 2 salaries. He could keep 2 more people if the employees were willing to clean the building. So he dropped the service and put a list together of all the things that they were going to need to do to clean the building. And at the top of the list was restrooms. And to the side of it, he put his name. And then he put the list out to the rest of the company. You can imagine now that it's pretty easy to sign up to vacuum or wash a window or empty a garbage can. when the CEO was cleaning the toilets. He cleaned them for 5 years. 5 years. They got through this. They didn't lay anybody off. They found ways to cut costs, and he pulled them through it. And they call that character, don't they? They call that leading out. They call that values of behavior. See, it wasn't him doing something. He was something. He had become great. He was able to make great decisions, cut other things so that he didn't have to cut people. Because some people have those values and others don't. But the great ones do. It's what leadership is all about. It's about leading. It's effective communication and exemplary behavior both. Do you have it? Do you have it? Don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. When you said, yes, I'll take the raise, I'll take the title, you said, yes, I will become a great leader. You didn't say, I'm going to stay the same person I am today and hope it works out and just take the raise. You said, yes, I'll take all of the benefits associated with being a leader, but I will become one. That's what you said. Now, it might not have occurred to you until just today, but that's what you said. That was a commitment you made to some people. That means you have to do a couple things. You have to behave correctly all the time. How often? All the time. Not some of the time. Not most of the time. All the time. When I was in my 20s, I read the poetry of Khalil Gibran. I'm sure you all do that every day. Lebanese poet. He talks about the masks we wear. He says we wear different masks in front of different people in our lives. Boy, that was true of me in my 20s. I was competitive. I was a college golfer. I had some stuff, juice in me. I recognized that, boy, when I'm in front of my mother, I behave a certain way. But when I'm on the golf course with my mates, it goes south quick. I can speak in tongues when I'm on the golf course and shots go bad. Have you ever had that experience? Sometimes the ball doesn't go where you want it to, and it's the ball's fault. I understand that, but it upsets me. I learned how to throw my club so beautifully, so elegantly. If it was doing things if it really misbehaved, I could just break it just enough so we could replace it because I didn't want to be with it anymore. You know what I'm talking about? So I wore a different mask in front of my mother than I did on the golf course, a different one at work than I did at church. Different masks all over the place. And I recognized it. And I thought, wow, incredibly inconsistent and poor quality living. So I made a decision in my 20s. Made a number of decisions in my 20s. I read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in my 20s and decided what I wanted my life to be. Rather, what I wanted the influence of my life to be, what I wanted my living to be about. One of the decisions I made is I'm going to wear the mask in front of my mother all the time. That I'm going to become that. I'm going to be that one. I think it's the best one. I'm still working on it. 40 years later, I'm still working on it. But I'm trying to get there. But I had to quit doing some things that took away from that. And they're hard things because they're socially acceptable, almost expected in some ways. But I couldn't do them anymore because if it changed the kind of person I was at any time of the day, then other people could see me at my worst. And I can't have that. Because whatever they see at my worst is what they'll judge me to be. They won't take me at the height of what I do and judge me to be that. They'll take the lowest common denominator, like the lobsters, and pull me down to them. You understand what I'm telling you? So I had to make some decisions to give some stuff up. Some of it I liked. But I had to give it up. I had to make decisions about that because leaders do that. Parents do that. That's what we do. It's our responsibility to ourselves. We really should be becoming this because if we do this, then we're trusted. I suspect we would have more successful relationships if we were this way. We would have more successful businesses and almost every other kind of thing if we chose to be this, see? And it comes down to that original question. Are we going to be or not? And when are you going to decide? Some wise person once said, when I became a man, I put away childish things. It's time to do it. I said that I will communicate effectively. How many of us are just brilliant at communicating effectively? In our leadership position, how many of us are great at it? It's a challenge, isn't it? To communicate effectively. How many love speaking to other people in meaningful ways? Just love it. See, there's always a couple of broken people in the audience that love it, right? But not many. Do you know what the number one fear of human beings is? Number one, public speaking. What I do. Am I courageous or what? Public speaking. We're afraid of each other. I find that most leaders don't want to have meaningful conversations, one-on-one or to groups or anything else. We're just scared of it. We don't want to do it. We're struggling with it. Help me understand that for a minute. Why is that the number one fear? What's the fear of getting up in front of people and talking? Tell me, what is it?
Judgment.
Judgment, isn't it? That's what every audience tells me. It's judgment. So do you believe that's happening? Audiences are judging? When you get up there, you're afraid they're judging. Does that mean that you're judging me right now?
Yeah.
Thou shalt not. I don't find that's actually true. I think they're waiting to assess you just a little bit, but I find most audiences are cheering for you because they want to have a good hour too. They're hoping you're good, right? And boy, if you're not, it's like this guy over here that's shopping right now. They're just off and going, oh no, I'm taking notes. That's a problem with our day and age now. We have the phones and the computers, and you can fake whatever you want, right? Oh, yeah, I've captured everything you've said. And I've ordered these shoes. You ought to see them. We have childish insecurities that we've got to put away. They've lived long enough. I was talking to a gal up in Calgary the other day, and she came up to me after, how can I become a great speaker? How can I just want to. I want to be good at it. I want to speak. I said, well, why don't you? Why can't you? I just can't. Why? I don't know. Well, so what happened to you? Well, I just had to give a talk one time in school. I was on stage, and I just choked, and I forgot my stuff, and I started to cry and ran off. How old were you? 12? How old are you now? Come on, it's 15 years later. How long is that, how long is playground stuff going to affect you? You're not 12 anymore. I got a feeling you'll remember what you're going to do, right? What if you just decided to not accept what the 12-year-old, right? The child is not father to the man. What you were at 7 doesn't have to be what you're going to be the rest of your life, but it becomes that most of the time because we don't read another book after that. We don't think again after that. We just retire from all that. We just get by in pursuit of leisure, in pursuit of feeling good, but not being and doing good. We stop trying to be and do good. We don't progress anymore after our childhood. We learn languages. We learn to balance ourselves and do all kinds of amazing things and almost nothing after 15. What if we just decided, you know what? I woke up fresh and new again this morning. I could do that all again. I could learn another language. Learn this one, probably learn another one. I could do all kinds of amazing. So I'll put away these childish insecurities, and it's time. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Put them away. The things that are limiting you, get rid of. They are not real. They're just perceptions you have. They're not actual. Every personality that speaks with passion about something they know about is attractive. You can enjoy any personality. When someone gets up in front of you, you'll see there's famous speakers of every kind of personality, aren't there? But they're just dynamic. And you like them. And you can be one. And you said you would. You said you would. Leadership is key to the success of an organization and your life. What do keys do? Keys lock or unlock things. Folks, what happens when you're around? What happens when you walk into the room? Do people feel locked or unlocked around you? At home, out in the community, at church, here at work? Do they feel professionally turned on or professionally turned off when you're around? You've got to identify this, don't you? Here's another personal question. Didn't know there was going to be this many of these, did you? You ready? You ready? How many of you are eccentric to the point of being obnoxious? Serious question. How many of you are eccentric to the point of being obnoxious? Hardly anyone ever raises their hand to that. There's always one goof off that does, right? But you know they're not. So how many of you have that relative, Uncle Bob, that you just have to allow room for? When they come to the family function, you just step back and, well, that's just Bob. He can behave any way he wants. Do anything he wants. He's crazy, so we just allow for it. Well, that's true at work too, right? Isn't it? There's those people, there's those leaders in particular. You wait and see what kind of mood they're in. Don't talk to him. Wait and see what kind of mood he comes in. Right? Can't talk to her right now. She's got this going on. We understand what I'm talking about? We allow room because they're eccentric. You know what I'm saying? What if it's you and you don't know it?
Right.
What if you wake up one day and you're old and it was you and it's embarrassing? Here's your assignment. Go back and talk to the people that you know, love, and trust. And just ask them one simple question. Am I obnoxious? They are dying to tell you. And when they tell you, make notes. And then start working on not being. But you best figure it out soon. Because some of us in this room, based on research and percentages, have to be. And it could be you. and make certain sure that it isn't. Don't let it be you. Do some analysis. Have emotional intelligence. Have self-awareness. Gain it. Talk to people. Figure out who you are. And become the kind of leader that unlocks people and causes them to move forward. One of the things that will help you is if you will constantly pay attention to causing people to feel appreciated in their space, they will like you better. They will give you better scores on your leadership. They'll feel better about it. 23 points better. That's a lot. It's not percentage, that's points. Motivation and enthusiasm are intrinsic values. Intrinsic means they live inside you, not outside you. So I can come in here and try to inspire you for an hour, but I cannot motivate you. I don't have that power. That's yours. You own it. You decide whether you're motivated. You decide whether you're enthused or not, whether you're in spirit or not. That's your decision, and you have to start to make it. Decide that that's what you're going to be, otherwise you're not going to get there. And he says the best way to do that is evoking people a sense of purpose. Because people that are connected to purpose greater than themselves become self-propelled, proactive. See? Self-propelled people, you don't have to manage them. It just requires a light touch of supervision, and you clear the road in front of them, and they'll take care of the rest. They'll pass you right up. They'll invent things that you can't even conceive of. Just get out of their way. But just make sure that they're enabled completely. Completely, as a whole person inside of that space. And amazing things are going to happen. And then you change. People connected to purpose are different quality people. See, some of the people in this room, work is still a place. It's still just a place. But for others in this room, it's a purpose. And you think about it all the time. But for some, it's still just a place. And for some of the people that you associate with, it's a place, not a purpose. Your job is to influence a change in it. When it becomes a purpose, again, they take over. They'll get all the work done. You don't have to manage, you just lead now. And management is just a component of leadership. It's not a separate thing. It's just an element of that, and all great leaders can manage. What's interesting is they change. And the best language I've ever found that describes this is from Patanjali, author of the Yoga Sutras. A few hundred years ago, he talked about the idea of engagement and what this is all about, this connection to purpose. And he says, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, your thoughts break their bonds. Mind transcends limitations. Consciousness expands in every direction. Now dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be greater by far than you ever dreamt yourself to be. It's impressive language, don't you think? How many of you agree that's beautiful language? Yeah? Do you know what happens to human beings when they hear beautiful language? The brain releases chemicals into the body that causes the body to feel enlightened, literally the presence of more light. And they become inspired to take action on what they've just heard. That's what we're after, right? That's why we don't use beautiful language in business. But maybe we should. If it has the natural ability of lifting people. See, connection to some noble cause changes us. And we become better people, and we become more servant-focused. And we start to achieve things we didn't think were possible. What about this idea of dormant? Anybody know anybody that's dormant inside the organization? Dormant people? Anybody know? Yeah? How many of you knew Isaac Newton studied employee engagement all of his life? We just had them call any time. That's funny. Isaac Newton? Anybody know Isaac Newton? You guys were taught in school that he studied the movement of celestial bodies, right? That's not what he did at all. He articulated the laws of engagement, not motion. He said a body in motion tends to what? Stay in motion. That's engagement. At the top of the organization, you've got 10% of the people that are bodies in motion, right? They're just in motion all the time. They do great work every day. They show up early, they leave late, and they are happy. They smile all day long. It's obnoxious, isn't it? Don't you just want to walk up to them and say, stop it. Let's go have coffee and talk about some people. They won't do it because they just get things done and they just love their life. At the bottom of the organization, there's about 10% of them called bodies at rest. A body at rest tends to what? Stay at rest, which you know from your weekends. And bodies at rest just don't do much. Are you familiar with some bodies at rest in the company? Yeah? How many of you believe that someone else in this room is a body at rest in the organization? Just point to it. Nothing, not even you this time. That's cool. Right? I've never had anyone yet point to anybody yet. I'm just dying for that. Some guy said, yeah, Bill over here. Dude is just flatlined. He's been here 20 years. We don't know what he does. Still hasn't happened yet, but I'm hoping we get to. Here's what's interesting. Inside your organization, there are bodies in motion and bodies at rest, but it's only about 10% at either end. In the middle, there's this whole group of people that are not in motion nor at rest, they're vibrating. And they're looking for two fundamental things: leadership and a cause that is greater than themselves to connect to. And if you provide those two things, they will just absolutely explode. They will become amazing people. And it's my job and your job to become the influencers of that, to get them where they need to be. This idea of purpose is interesting. Now, here's our job. We must identify and then articulate the higher purpose of what we do inside the organization. We must identify what it is and then articulate it. We've talked about that communication process. Can I convey to another person what the higher purpose of what we do is? Can I inspire them around that concept? We work with a little startup coffee shop starting to catch on. I don't know if you've had them down here. It's called Starbucks. Have you heard of it? We have startup in Seattle. Do you know the history of that? Howard was over in Italy, and he had a great coffee shop experience in Italy. You know, they had formal waiters with the jackets and the towels over their arm, and classical music playing. And he brought that back to Seattle, and he wanted to open a shop like that. In Seattle, he did, and of course, it failed miserably. People in Seattle didn't want that kind of a coffee shop. And so instead of quitting, he just backed up, and he rethought the process, and he created the model that he has now. And he says, look, we're going to create a third place in between home and work based on human connection and humanity, not coffee. Isn't that interesting? I want to create a third place. So back in Salt Lake, again, just a half a block away from our global offices, luckily there's a Starbucks on the far corner of the intersection. More proximate to us, there's a 7-Eleven gas station near the corner. They sell coffee there too, for $1. Over at Starbucks, they sell coffee for $5, probably going on $6 soon. Where do you think we all go for coffee? No. Starbucks, right? Like 80% of the world. We go to Starbucks. You're going to pay $5 to one. You're going to say, yeah, well, Starbucks coffee is better. There's no question. It's probably twice as good, but it isn't 5 times as good. You can't do that with coffee. So if it isn't the coffee, what is it? It's the experience. Think deeply with me. The employee experience. What do I experience every day? The experience I have at Starbucks causes me to pay $5. Turns out people don't want to buy their morning coffee in between a Slurpee and a hot dog. They want to go into a place that makes them feel good. They turn around, there's all these cool people, these little tables sitting around having these great conversations. And it turns out that the experience is actually not the coffee, not the pastry, not even the ambiance of the place. It's the conversation itself. It's how people are feeling sitting there having conversations with each other or sitting quietly by themselves. It is the experience they're paying for, not necessarily the services. So it's not the product nor the service that's our higher purpose. It's the contribution we're making to the well-being of somebody else. And when we start to understand that and have the ability to articulate that to other people, then we'll start to succeed. That's our job. To be able to share that message and move people. When we communicate with them around this idea of purpose, we can get a lift in how they feel about the connection to it. When we pay attention to them and we make sure that they're recognized for things that they do that connect to that. People want to have a sense of opportunity to grow and develop both personally and professionally here in this space, at this company. Frederick Herzberg is the father of human motivation research in the world for the last 40 or 50 years. He found 4 things motivate people in a professional environment. And money is not one of them. And money is not one of them. And for your notes, money is not one of them. You have to have it up to a certain point to be okay. But beyond that, it does not motivate. It's actually a negative motivator. So you try to give somebody $100 at a certain point, and then you don't replicate that every time and have any growth from it. It becomes a negative thing. So you don't get that anywhere near your recognition or appreciation space. It just doesn't belong there. It doesn't work there at all. But there are 4 other things, and they are opportunities. The opportunity to learn. Make notes of this, because you've got, as a leader, to get back and do something about all of this, right? The opportunity to learn. Create an environment where people can learn. The opportunity to grow. But look at what in responsibility. This goes back to the Greeks' recognition. It's about being and doing things, not feeling things, right? To grow in responsibility, that's work. To contribute to the well-being of others and to be recognized, but for achievement. See? People thrive from work. That's how we are blessed. We don't actually thrive from feeling good. We thrive when we achieve. We're at our very best when we achieve. That's why we all seek out noble causes to work for. If it doesn't happen professionally, we try to find it in our spare time. But we're looking for that. If I provide this, people feel good about what they're doing, and they have a sense of opportunity to grow and develop, both personally and professionally, here at this place. It matters when we speak to them and make sure that appreciation is present. Again, that's the power of the accelerator of this kind of language, is it causes people to rise in their estimation of you as a leader. When you're constantly reaffirming them, things change in their eyes. People want to have a sense of well-being. What does that mean? Is that health? Isn't that what we focus on when we talk about well-being programs? We do 10,000 steps, isn't that right? Do you know why we do 10,000 steps inside of organizations now? Because there's people that sell us junk that track it. Right? And so now we've lost track of what that originally meant. Now we just buy junk and hand it to them. Here, listen, how many steps your dog take when you put your watch on it today? Right? I've watched competitions where they'll put it on their kids at night so that they win. They have the most steps out of their sales team. But it wasn't their steps, right? It's their kids who go running around the block. Here, son, go put this watch on. Run around. Well-being isn't about health. It's partly about health, but it's a comprehensive approach to things. The physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, occupational, social, and other kinds of well-being. The idea here is to literally be well as a whole person. And is that supported at this company? In our environment, in our culture, environment, physical, culture, people, right? Am I supported in these things? I don't have to build shrines to everything everybody wants. I just need to enable them to have this experience. Are we very clear about how we can coach people about finances? Because the masses have no idea how to master their money. Do we provide opportunity for that? Do we do that with our environmental? Right? Are we paying attention to have the best environment in baseball here? Are we going to have the best environment we can possibly have for our people? Are we cognizant of all of this? Or are we just handing out watches to track 10,000 steps and we're good to go? I can check the well-being box. Next. Can't do that. I've got to literally be concerned about whether my people are well. And you've got to be concerned whether you are. Are you well in all of these places? And if you're not, what are you going to do about it? And when? What are you waiting for to be what you're supposed to be? What are you waiting for? When's that going to happen? What would it take? I find that most people wait for a crisis. I have a buddy that lost his leg on a motorcycle. He's an Paralympic skier now. I ask him all the time, why didn't you go ski in the Olympics when you had 2 legs? Didn't do a damn thing. Just rode his motorcycle. It was useless. But then when he's lost something, now he's got to make up for it, so he becomes an Olympic skier. And I was like, come on. Wake up before you lose the leg. Right? You don't need a crisis to make the change. Have one today. Fake it. Then change. Right? Don't wait till you're dying. Eugene O'Kelly was the CEO, 53-year-old CEO of KPMG. He wrote a memoir about his life. And the first sentence was, he says, I was blessed. I was told I had 3 months to live. The last week of May in 2005, he was informed that he had 3 large tumors in his brain. He had about 3 months left in his life at 53 years old. So 2 weeks later, he stepped down as CEO. And he says, I'm an accountant by trade. And he says, I organize and plan everything that I do, including diet. And so he went home and he sat down at his table in his kitchen one night and he drew 5 concentric circles, small to big. And then he started to fill those circles with the people that were in his life. And the middle circle was him and his wife. The next circle was him and his kids and his nuclear family, and so on. As people moved away out to that biggest circle, it was just associates and people that he knew. And he set up appointments. He started in the outer circle. He set up appointments with all of those people to do what he said was unwind his life. And he was basically going to go around and say goodbye to everybody in his life working from the outer circle in. And he talked about creating perfect moments. He wanted to create perfect moments with everybody. And he did that over the course of those 3 months. And then they went out to Tahoe, to a home they had in Tahoe. And that was kind of the end of that. He had his brother and his mother flew in one weekend, and they spent the Sunday on a boat all day long. And towards the end of that day, he took his mother out in front of the boat, and they had their conversation. And he talked about being good with all of this. He wanted to make sure that she was, and he knew that he would see her again. It was a faith-based company. And the brother and the mother flew back, and they finished it with him on his couch one evening. And he's just laying there holding his wife in his lap. He's laying his head against the couch, and he says to her, well, you're going to have to take it from here. I've done all I can. And it passed. But he focused on creating perfect moments. You know what occurred to me when I read that? It's in a book called The Power of Moments, by the way, if you want to get it. Perfect moments. As far as I know, I'm not going to die in 3 months. But I can be having perfect moments right now, couldn't I? I don't have to have the crisis to start doing it. I can start doing it boy, it just informed me that I've got to do a better job when I'm around my kids and grandkids, when I'm around my wife, when I'm around people that I care about, which is everybody. I could have better moments. I can focus on making your moment today better because I've got to create perfect moments for you. That's my job. And I decided way back in my 20s that that was my passion, to instill in people a passion for personal and professional excellence and willingness to pursue a program of development to get to that. And that's what I've got to do. And I don't want to wait for a crisis to make that decision to get there. When we add language about appreciation and recognition, people have a deeper sense of well-being as well. This impacts every single one of these. Appreciation is where we started as a company. We are now really a culture consulting organization, but this is still the catalyst from it. My book, Appreciate, talks about why this is so important. What do we do about it? And how do we do those things beautifully, elegantly, well? It's there to give you the information you need. If we never read anything, we won't have any of this information, right? We've got to learn to read. Yeah, I just don't read very well. Well, get over it and read anyway. The brightest people that I'm around read slowly. Let me tell you that again. The brightest people that I spend my time, the smartest, famous people that I'm around, read slowly and enjoy reading slowly because they read to learn, not to finish. Right? So when you watch Good Will Hunting and you're watching Matt Damon go like that, giggling over the pages, right? That doesn't actually happen. Just take your time, read a few sentences and see if you can learn something from it. This makes sense? But you have to read. Nothing else replaces it. Do you know what else you have to do? You have to write with your hand on paper. Might help you to use a pen or a pencil, but you have to write on the piece of paper. Why? Because it is a neuromuscular learning experience. It moves information back into your brain, and that tool right there won't do that. It'll store information beautifully, but it doesn't cause learning to take place. So we capture it there, but we have to do some thoughtful writing to ourselves about things, because that's how we move it back. See, if we want to get better, there's ways to get better. You just have to really be cognizant of what they are and do something about it. Today's workplaces provide abundant tools to connect with each other, but we are lonely. Lonelier than we've ever been. Isn't it true? No? Yes? Some of you can't even look up from your devices to answer the question. Right? The UK just appointed a minister of loneliness to their government. I guess they've solved everything else so well they can start working on you and I's loneliness now. The government's going to step in. It's so bad. It's a powerful thing. Relationships. We have no relationships at all. We can't communicate. We're worried about our kids, aren't we? Their ability to have a conversation, because we're finding they can't do it. They'll sit on the couch next to each other and text to each other because they don't know how to communicate without an emoji, right? Without initials. I've had people text me messages, my kids. I can't understand them. I don't know what all these things are. Some of you can do it. You're really good at it. I'm clueless. I don't even ask what it's about. And I probably miss out on events and all kinds of cool stuff. It's an interesting thing. 53% say have a sense of belonging in their organization. That's half. Let me tell you about research and statistics a little bit. What you're going to find in most statistics is that they're going to range between about 45 and 65%. Do you know what that tells you? Half the people in the world wake up happy and half wake up miserable. And the only numbers that we're getting that are positive are the happy folks. They'll be happy working here. They're happy working out there serving drinks. They're happy at a gas station. They don't care whether they just wake up happy because they want to be. And that's the people that are giving us the good results. And we're not affecting the other group very much because they work up miserable. Some of them work really hard to be that, by the way. You ever heard of Johnny Raincloud and Debbie Downer? I've met those people. Had their autographs, right? Their job is to come in and make you miserable every day. They want to be miserable. They want to cause you to be miserable. And they're really effective at it. They're better at doing it than the other people are that are trying to get good done because they don't work as hard at it. These miserable folks, they work hard. Right? And you know them, don't you? Hope you're not one, but you know who they are. You know what's interesting about those people, and especially the ones that are the noisiest and that fight with us all the time and complain the most? If you can flip them, they become your most dynamic leaders. They have juice inside them, okay? So don't discard them. Try to figure out what's wrong and see if you can resolve it. Now, if you can't, then discard it. You can't have you mess up 100 other people just because this dude's a good guy. He's a mess. So make good decisions, right? But be aware that this is a big deal. Let me give you 3 definitions of appreciation so you understand what this really is all about so you can grow into it. We're okay on time, yeah? Good. Good. About 3 more hours. What's that? A little break?
Doing great.
Doing great? Oh, no. It's just what we do. Greatness is expected, right? First definition, sensitive awareness or understanding. That's emotional intelligence. How many of you can speak to the 5 elements of emotional intelligence? Okay, so we're going to have to schedule another meeting where we start to really chide you for not knowing about the critical elements of human life. So, you've got to make a list of the most important things in the world and get to know what they are. And emotional intelligence is one of them, right? It is the thing that creates success in anything. Emotional intelligence. It's more important than IQ. That's a forebound conclusion. There's no research left that says IQ matters anymore. Angela's book, Grit, talks about the idea that it's not at all about natural gifts and talents. It's about hard work and practice and smarts and intelligent practice and purposeful practice. Emotional intelligence has a handful of elements to it. I am self-aware. I do whatever it takes to be aware of who I am and what I am. I talk to other people. I get 360s done. I'm honest with people. I go ask people about myself. I do everything I can possibly do to be aware of what I am. I'm cognizant of my strengths and my weaknesses. I'm aware of what they are. And I work on both. I try to improve on my strengths, but I also try to work on my weaknesses and see if I can overcome them in some way. I'm aware of me. I'm aware of me and the influence and the impact I have on people. And I work on it until I have the one I want. See, you all influence other people. It just might not be the one you want to have. Change that. And start today. Go ahead and start today. Don't do it fast. You'll scare people. But slowly ease yourself into the change. Right? Self-awareness. Second, self-regulation. You're in charge of yourself. You're in charge of yourself. I just can't stand people that tell me I can't remember names. Hey, can you ping me on that so I don't forget? No. How old are you? I'm telling you now. Right? You have that? Be responsible. Remember their name. Remember the appointment. Figure it out. Manage yourself. Find time to exercise. Find time to sleep properly, to manage stress, to have conversations. Live your life today. Might not be here next week. Regulate yourself. Self-motivation is number 3. You're responsible for your own motivation. Not my job, not his job, not anybody else's job. You're responsible for that. Be positive. Be motivated. Stop being tired. Stop being wore out. Stop articulating it. Every limitation you argue for, you can have. What does that mean? Everything I argue for, I can have. All my family, we just have a temper. I'm just a mourning person. Oh, I just this and I just that. I mean, come on. Nobody has that stuff. That's not how it works. You're not born angry. Right? You have an Irish Catholic, we can't do anything. We just be crazy all the time. That's not how it works. These are just decisions that we make. But we argue for these limitations. Oh, this is just how we are. That's how my family is. So I can't do anything about it. Right? It's ridiculous. You're in charge of your own motivation. Figure out how you're going to do it. And stay motivated. Even through the rainy days. Even through the tough stuff. Flowers can't grow without rain. Got to have it. Right? Get through it. Use it all. So, self-awareness. Self-regulation. Self-motivation. Empathy. Seeking to understand people, having understanding, but not sympathy for. You might be down and out. I'm not going to come and join you there, but I understand it. And I'll do everything I can to help you there. So I'm going to seek to understand you, but I'm not going to join you in your mess. I'm just going to understand it and see if we can get to a place of empathy. Right? But I've got to take the time to understand you because each member of my team needs to be understood differently. And I have to be more patient. Some learn from reading, some learn from lectures, some learn from experience. I have to provide my instruction in all of those ways. So we get it. Finally, social skill. Social skills. You learn social skills. I spent a full day with an organization in Michigan. We were crafting their purpose. We had 45 of their leaders there. We had the CEO there. The CEO had recently had a 360 done on him. And he is perceived by this group to be arrogant and eccentric and unapproachable. And I find him to be just a delightful guy. He's a really good guy. I did some coaching with him. He's a great guy. So we had this full day, and we really got to be good friends. And we got down into some emotional stuff, and we come out of it with this beautifully crafted purpose statement. So at the end of it, I close with kind of an emotional story. And he gets up, and he says, I don't really want to try to follow that, but he says, I do want to address the 360 that I just had done. The 360 told me very clearly that you think I'm arrogant, unapproachable, eccentric, etc. And he has tears. They've never seen him emotional 1 minute of his life ever. And now he's got tears in because of the day. And he said, I've got to tell you that I'm not those things. But I'm scared of you. He says, I'm an introvert, dramatically introvert, and fairly insecure person away from my leadership role. I can be a CEO. I can stand up in front of all of you, and I can lead this company. I can lead you in this day. But tonight, when it's social hour, I don't know how to come and have a conversation with you independently, right? Individually. I'm scared. I don't know how to do it. I have no skill. Social skill. He didn't have it, and he admitted it to him, and it broke him down. And then they came up after and embraced him and just saw a completely different side of this man. And he should have revealed this a long time before himself, right? But you got to understand that we don't all have social skills, but you are supposed to. He said, yes, I will become an adult. Yes, I'll be a leader. I will develop it. Right? These are all responsibilities we have to get there. So this is emotional intelligence relative to this concept that we're talking about in leadership. Sensitive awareness or understanding. So there was this young girl in elementary school, and she couldn't sit still. You ever know kids like that? Maybe you were one. Just absolutely cannot sit still under any circumstance. And it's dramatic. It's not even just normal. It's just crazy. And finally her mother decides, I've got to do something about this. And so she takes this little girl to a specialist. Specialist spends some time with the girl, and then he calls the mother and the daughter into his office. And they're talking for a minute, and then he says to the young girl, he says, now I need to speak with your mother privately. So I'm going to take her just outside in the hallway. We'll just be on the other side of the door. Now while I'm gone, I'm going to turn on the radio to keep you company, and we'll be right back. Turns the radio on. They get up, start to leave, and she's fidgeting already. They go out, shut the door, and he says to Mom, now just look through the window. She looks in through the window of the office, and in less than a minute, the daughter is dancing to the music on the radio, just all over the room. She just can't control it, right? She's dancing around. He just lets it sit for a minute. He just lets the mother watch this for a minute. And then he says to her, see, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. If you'll put her in an education path associated with dance, she'll learn all the other competencies she needs. But if you keep her in public school, they'll probably kill her there, because she can't sit in a desk all day long. And most of the kids in there probably can't either, but she really can't. But if you'll make this adjustment, you'll find that she'll master all the other competencies. Well, her name was Jillian Lane. Jillian Lane, the dancer. Jillian Lane, the choreographer. Jillian Lane, the world-renowned, Broadway, award-winning choreographer, business speaker, multimillionaire, influencer. Or little Jillian, the girl that they prescribed some medication for and told to calm down. But we had somebody that had sensitive awareness or understanding of her. Took the time to discover what the secret was and put her on a path to greatness. You see, everyone inside of them has the seeds of greatness. Our job, mine and yours, is to do two things. Capture it. Place them in a position to succeed. Provide all the conditions necessary for growth. Write it down. Capture it. How will you teach it? How will you become it if you don't? Place yourself and others in a position to succeed. Then provide them with all the conditions necessary for growth. And nothing else can happen but they grow. That's what happened. But I've got to have a sensitive awareness or understanding to get there. The second principle is a simple one. It's the expression of appreciation. This is where recognition lives. We do not have recognition programs. There's no such thing. Recognition is not a program. It's a moment. When the leader recognizes that the employer is doing something, they're applying effort, or they're achieving results, or they've been at the company and given us their loyalty and their contribution over a period of time. I recognize that, and so I have a moment when I'm going to recognize now that employee for that reason. But that moment is about conveying appreciation. That's all it's about. And it's not complete until the person that is being recognized feels appreciated. It's not done when you think it's done. It's done when they have come to a place where they feel appreciated. Am I clear here? So we can't do checkbox recognition moments. You can't walk by the desk and shoot and go, hey, great job the other day. You haven't earned the right to do that. You've got to have high quality moments where you speak with specificity about what they achieved and why it's important. You cause them to feel appreciated. You value that when it happens to you, don't you? A lot of you are in this room because of that. Somewhere in your lives you've had moments like that that caused you to think you could be in leadership. So you decided to be in leadership, and now you're here. Well, other people want to get there too. This is part of that process to make sure we get it. When we ask people, what would cause you to do great work all the time? If we wanted you to do great work, really every day, all the time, what could we do as a leader or as an organization? And they said a few interesting things. You could inspire it. You could give me autonomy. What does autonomy mean? That means I have the freedom to do it. That's all autonomy means, right? I've been given the freedom and the resources to do it. But the masses said recognize it. If you really want great work, recognize when you see it. Speak about it. Call it out. Make sure that your people feel appreciated for doing it, and you'll get a lot more of it. It's the expression of it that really matters. This is this concept, again, of recognition. 32% of people feel they receive frequent, meaningful, sincere recognition. 3 in 10. I suspect that number is probably high in some environments. But that's 3 in 10 that feel like they're actually being recognized properly. We have 3 naturally occurring opportunities to do this with people. You got to know what they are. It's only 3. How simple can that be? When they are applying effort towards a goal, we pay attention to them. We recognize that they're applying effort properly and praise it. The thing that you do with effort is you praise it. You don't reward it, you praise it. You notice it, you can do it every day. People say, oh, can't do this too much. People get used to it. Sure they do. How many of you are sick and tired of people telling you they love you? How many of you just had enough? You go in, you walk in, your companions tell you, you tell me you love me one more time, I'm out. I'll go find an environment where they don't do that. Right? When it's authentic, you can't get enough great feedback, so it doesn't work. We praise effort when we see it. When people achieve results, we reward that. We pause, we stop the machine for a minute. We give them the moment they deserve, and we give them a symbol that is representative of the moment because it matters. Then I am reminded often by it. I have a guitar pick in my wallet I was given by a CEO of a major international company because he gave it to me at the end of the day. I'd spent 6 hours with his team, and he came up and told me how much he appreciated it. And he had some language around it. He says, you mentioned that you play guitar, and he says, I only do this a few times in my life, but when I'm around somebody that does something really great, I do that. And he pulled out a little pouch and had guitar picks in it. Hands me a Fender guitar pick. So why don't you keep this and have it remind you of today, and the work you did, and how I feel about this work, and the difference it's going to make. And it's never left my wallet. I don't use it. It's just in there. Every time I open my wallet, I see it every time. I've received checks and crystal stuff and all kinds of amazing things that I value, but nothing's more important to me than that guitar pick. There's no value to that, is it? It's what it is and how I got it. And that's what we're talking about here, is this idea. We reward results. And finally, when people reach milestones inside the company, we don't have service awards. That's a ridiculous concept. Thanks for serving me for 20 years. Here's your piece of paper, and I'm going to serve me some more, right? We celebrate careers. We celebrate who they are and what they've contributed and how they've contributed to make a difference inside the organization. We have a deeper relationship developed between the employee and the manager. That's what we want. People start to stay because of the manager instead of leave because of the manager. Nice change, right? Then people have a deeper sense of who they are, their confidence and their competence. Now think about it. Confident people self-evolve. They become more competent because they want to. Well, the more competent you get, the more confidence you have. It's a virtuous cycle. It feeds itself, and now you have amazing folks. And they know they're in good standing. That's critical. I've got to know I'm in good standing. I'd prefer to know whether I'm in good shape or bad shape as opposed to not knowing at all. I've talked to people that have had an evaluation in 13 years. They don't know whether they're doing good or bad or indifferent. They have no clue. That's bad, isn't it? Human beings don't function well. If I know I'm doing poorly, I can fix that. But at least I need to know. So I need to be in a place where I can do that. If we exercise like this, we're going to do it. Rewarding results is different. We get 3 completely different things when we stop and give them a high-quality moment. By the way, we do that in front of other people. What happens when you run into people that say, oh, I don't like to be recognized in public? Does that ever happen? Happens all the time. What do you say to them? Somebody says to you, yeah, I really don't like to be recognized in public. Here's what you say. It's a simple sentence. You might want to capture it. Liar, liar. Pants on fire. There's nobody that doesn't want to be recognized in front of other people. It's just been done badly before. They've been embarrassed by it, or something's happened that they didn't want to have happen. You've got to talk to them. But you also have to inform them that they are part of a team. This isn't home. You're part of a business team. I need my team to see what great work looks like, and you just did it. And more, I need them to see that I know what it is, and that I do something about it when I find it. And I just need you to help me. I will not embarrass you. I'll be semi-formal or formal. I'll take care of it properly. Make sure these moments are elegant and blesses the person that's being recognized. It's not about you. Not time for your comedy routine or for you to suck all the oxygen out of it. It's about them. It's about them. Make it about them. They have a desire now to innovate on behalf of the company. They start focusing on delivering a unique brand experience to the customer. They're no longer focused on what they're getting. They're focused on what they're giving. That's a complete change in the kind of people that we have here. They want to be known as difference makers. People that truly make a difference, that the people love them, receive that difference. That's a different kind of person altogether. Angela told us, Angela Duckworth wrote the book Grit. If you haven't read that, got to get that read. She came out and spoke at our summit for us a few weeks ago. Said the subjective experience of effort, what it feels like to work hard, can and does change when the effort is rewarded in some way. It always does. When it is rewarded in some way, it changes the very nature of how we feel about what we're doing, and we like it. And so we go do it again, and we even try to get better. So if you apply that principle in your life, you get there. When you're celebrating careers, people feel valued because they hear leaders and peers speaking about value. and the great experience we've had at the company over periods of time, we have improved relationships with each other because we get to talk about great work that I've heard your stories and you've heard mine. Something else happens when we have these moments in front of other people. Other people that are watching the moment start to get a sense, wow, I'd like to have that said of me. I'd like to have a career like that. And they will go back and start to work differently and better because they're seeing other people being recognized for who they are. And they go back and they try to become better. They get a sense of fit and belonging at that particular organization that changes the game. John Kennedy suggested that in expressing all of our gratitude, the highest form of appreciation is not uttering words, but living by them. Circles all the way back to being again, isn't it? It's how we live and who we are. And then the words we say start to matter when our behavior is exemplary. Then we start getting an impact out of it. Let me quickly give you 7 best practices around recognition. Try to capture them. These are the things that tells us how to behave. The first one is we recognize people frequently. Frequently. What does research say? How frequently should we be paying attention to our people, rewarding them, and so forth? What do you think? Yeah. Who cares what the research says? Frequent. Frequent. All the time. All the time. So I have my quote-unquote smartphone, stupidest name for a tool in all of history. I have my smartphone with me. So I'm on the road today. So if I have 5 conversations, ladies, if I have 5 conversations with my wife on the phone today, which is likely, out of the 5 calls, how many at the end do I have to express affection? At the end of the 5 calls? All 5? The answer is 7 to 10. 7 to 10 times. And if I end one call, and I don't, I have to be the first one to call back, don't I? Don't I? Right? If I end one call. I mean, we talked 10 minutes ago, but something could have changed in that 10 minutes, right? So it's got to be every single time. Wonderful story of an older couple. They're having breakfast one morning. And the wife looked up from her breakfast and she says, you know, John, you never tell me you love me anymore. John looked up from his breakfast and he says, Iris, I told you I loved you when I married you. I'll let you know if it changes. That's not frequent enough. Every day, all the time, but authentic. Can't fake this. Can't feel like a pro. It's got to be authentic when you do it. Frequent, all the time. Timely. As proximate to the success as it can possibly be without being interrupted. You've got to get to it immediately. What do you notice about Olympic swimmers when they get a gold medal put around their neck? They're still wet. Make sure your people are still wet. Get it to them as fast as you possibly can. That's the peak value. If time passes, you still go back and do it. But try not to let that happen very often. Make sure it's timely. Has to be inclusive. Does inclusive mean that everyone is eligible? No. Inclusive means everyone is receiving. Everyone is receiving moments of recognition. Everyone is feeling deeply appreciated. And this is the critical part. Not in comparison with anyone else. Not in comparison. Because if my manager evaluates me against my team, I may never be recognized. They're better than I am. I haven't caught up to that yet. They've been here longer, they have a greater skill set. I may not be recognized at all if I'm being compared. But see, this isn't about comparison nor competition. It doesn't work. The only thing that I'm competing with is my potential. My manager pays attention to what I'm doing versus what I'm capable of doing, and I should be recognized at any time. What if I have a corrective conversation scheduled with an employee on Thursday? They do something great on Tuesday. Should I pause and recognize the greatness on Tuesday? Yes. I don't need to speak about them as a whole person. I can be very clear about what that great work they just did. And I'll celebrate that. It's not making promises for the future. It's saying, this today you did this. On Thursday I'm going to say, I need a lot more of that and a little less of this other. Right? That you do more like that, we're going to be good to go. But I can coach them in that. By the way, I want you to write this down. When you have a meeting, an evaluation, any kind of review, any time at all, let's imagine for a minute this is going to be 15 minutes. This goes from the top all the way down. You're going to spend 15 minutes with a child, with a relationship, anywhere, in work especially. The first 10 minutes of the 15 are spent telling that individual why you value them. Every time, all the time. With everybody. The first 10, this is why you're important to our team. Let me tell you what I see in you. These are the characteristics and the attributes you have. This is the difference you make with other people. People look for your smile every morning because it makes a difference. You cheer people up. Your sense of humor is great. The kind of work, the meticulous nature of your work, going the extra mile without ever being it. I spend the first 10 minutes making sure they understand that I value them. Then the last 5, I say to them, now, what would you like to work on going forward? And they will almost always give me what I was going to talk to them about. You understand? They know what they're falling short of. And if they miss one, I can coach that. I can say, there's one other I'd like to work on with you. If you're open to it, I think I'd like to see us work on this together as well. But they'll leave that session feeling valued and coached, not called on the carpet by their boss. You want to have quality conversations with everybody in your life. Be very clear up front. This is why I appreciate you. I do it all the time. You'll think it's hokey at first, but it isn't. It's the solution to all of your other problems. I don't think there'd be a divorce in history if couples would pay attention to seeking to understand each other and speak to each other this way. Before we have this fight, let me tell you why I love you. Let me tell you why it's so important to me. What's going on? And you never even get to it. The other stuff will fall by the wayside. But we don't communicate like that anymore. We just do the button pushing experience, and it blows us up. Make sure that we're not comparing. If it's performance-based, you'll never have problems. People won't accuse you of having favorites. This just makes sense. This is what we do at this level. Of course, she deserves that. Did you see what she did? That makes sense, and that's how we reward that. That's perfectly in line. So it makes sense for everybody. We get rid of all this nuance, all the stuff that's going on. When we stand them up in front of people, now we tell them a story. We see the work and we tell the story about it. Just like you're talking to kids putting them to bed. You tell the story about what's going on. Make sure that it is deadly specific. Exactly what did they face? How did they face it? What did they do to solve the problem? And when it was solved, what was the contribution that was made back to our team, the company, and most importantly to the client as a result? Tell the story. Then they'll know that you care. Then they'll know that you're all in. Make it personal to them, not to you. Not to you. It isn't important what you like. It's important what they like. As a leader, it's just like being a parent. How many of you discovered once you got married and you had children that you didn't have a life after that? Anybody discover that? That's the reality. Right? It was a shock to me. I had 4 kids, went 25 years with absolutely no existence. I have no memory of that time. All I can remember is sitting on hard benches at games and recitals and stuff. Anybody like that? No clue what happened in that 25 years. 4 kids, got them all through. Incredible expense, just a ridiculous amount of sacrifice. Totally gave my life up. Right? It's an interesting thing, isn't it? We've got to gain that awareness, but you've got to pay attention to what matters to people, right? Others, other than you. You discover as a parent that it isn't about you anymore. That's sad. But know this, you come to a place where you become empty nest. And I've experienced that too. And finally that last kid goes out and you sit across the table with this other person that apparently is not leaving. And you say, because all the kids have left, you're just waiting. But, then you say, now, how did we get together? What was that brought us together? Because we don't have games to go to. But it's just for a short season. Luckily, they have grandchildren. Pretty soon you're back at games again and stuff. Your schedule's busy, and then you're back there. It's a struggle there for just a few years with each other. Am I clear about that? It's a whole different seminar, but I just thought I would mention it right while we're in the midst of this personal understanding. Seek to understand what matters to them and deliver that. It's not about you. It's never about you. By the way, don't coach your team based on how you became successful. They don't care. And it's not going to help them. They're not you. Right? Something's going to happen for them to create them success. You've got to figure out what that is. Teach them that. Finally, what's the simplest way to convey sincerity to another human being? What? Simplest way to convey sincerity to another human being. The answer is be sincere. Care. Make sure it matters to you. And if it doesn't matter to you, don't do it. Because they'll see through that, won't they? You've all experienced inauthentic moments, have you not? People have complimented you that you probably didn't know your name before the meeting. Right? So be sincere. One lady raised her hand one time in one of these sessions and she says, I'm just curious, out of everybody in our company, how many of you are people that actually appreciate other people at all? I thought it was a powerful question. Because some of us actually lose the ability to value other people. We actually start thinking they are a nuisance and a pain in our butt and create a lot of trouble, but we lose the ability to fundamentally appreciate each person we come in contact with. It's an interesting thing. And it's a fair question to ask yourself where you're at. Are you a person that genuinely appreciates people as we go? When you apply these principles to every one of the other influencers in a culture, everything rises. You get more people to value you, and those people value you in greater levels with greater depth. If you'll take action around correct principles over time, you're going to find that people value you, and you value yourself, and you will get results. That's a cool thing. When you behave around principles, good things always happen. If we're obedient to all this, if we do these things, we get the third definition of appreciation. It happens with real estate, it happens with investing. You get a rise in value. And it's a rise that's like the tide. It raises all boats. Suddenly, the average mean level of productivity, production, engagement in your company just naturally rise because the people in it are rising. And everyone is working together to cause a rise, right? And we're just excited about what we're doing. And that rise in value takes us where we want to be. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced daily. Simple idea. When I finally start to understand what the principles are around success, if I take action around them daily, have discipline associated with it, I can have anything I want. I can achieve anything in my life I want with consistent action or correct principles over time. I can achieve anything I want. The key is here is to decide it's time. It's time now to do it. No more excuses, right? No more language about why I don't. Just start crafting language about why you do. And talk to yourself first. Convince yourself first. And then if you want to talk to other people about it, you're privileged. But all of this will cause people to feel like they work at a successful place. And if they feel like they're a part of a winning team, like they're doing something that really matters, it changes things. They want to be able to celebrate successes, but also failures and risk-taking and other things safely. And when they do that, I mean, just everything about them changes. 46% of employees say working in their organizations like playing for a winning team. That's half. That's that half that wake up that way every morning. They wouldn't care what that organization was. They'd think it was winning anyway. We've got to have a way to affect the people that aren't connected to us naturally. How are we going to get to that with those other people? Well, we've got to figure out what's going on with them and solve for them. Something is keeping them from doing it. It might be in their life, it might be other things we may or may not have control over, but we can try. But we can create the best environment possible. We can have the best culture possible, the best friends available at work, the best systems to help them learn and grow and develop things away from where they are. And again, when we apply this concept of appreciation to these people, we create a rise in that too. So if we do this, we find direction. We figure out where we're going, we connect to that true north, and we really can become a powerful organization. If we don't do it, we're going to get loose. Ever been to a 4 or 5-year-old soccer game on a Saturday morning? Yeah? They call this bunch ball, do they? Because the kids just run around in a bunch, don't they? Balls randomly bouncing off their shins, right? We have 2 little goals either end of a very small pitch. We don't know why we put nets on those. We don't use those for anything. But if I conducted a standard engagement survey of this group trying to determine their engagement and happiness, what would I get? Score. If 100% was the best available, what would I get? I'd get 1,000%. They couldn't be happier about being there. They're just not accomplishing a single thing associated with soccer. And that's why we thought we were there. And this is what most of the companies in the world are doing that we work with. They're playing bunch ball. People on the field have no clue what the purpose of this is all about. And they're kind of having fun doing it. They're getting paid a little bit to doing it. It might be the best game in town. But they don't have a clue what they're doing. And maybe one person over on the sideline does that's kind of coaching, but can't convey that to anybody in any effective way. So we play bunch ball. That's not what we want. I think we're more interested in something like World Cup, aren't we? It's called the beautiful game for a reason. Because we're spread out over a world-class pitch, executing on strategy and tactic, to score goals, to win games, to take championships on purpose and by design, the way your life should be. We can decide what the outcome is going to be, and when we do, we get this naturally organic culture where people are naturally tending to the outcomes because they want to. Eisenhower said, great leadership is the kind that causes people to do what you want to do because they want to do it. They call those teams. Shared values, common direction. Now we have the understanding to do what we have to do. Will you indulge me in one final story? You had luck? Okay? Storytelling is a secret, isn't it? You want to teach somebody something, you teach the principle, you tell a story that illustrates it. This story is to set this point for you powerfully. So this comes from an interview that I recently reread in a book called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I would think that if there was a book called Success Principles that you would want to read it, if it leads you to success. Jack Canfield, anybody know Jack? Know who he is? He's one of the co-authors of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Familiar with those, aren't we? Sold billions of copies of that book in every language. He made hundreds of dollars. And he's interviewing a billionaire developer out of California named Ken Barron. And the interview is about success, fulfillment, life quality. Barron says, you know, Jack, as I look back on my life, I can separate it into 4 very distinct phases. Phase 1 of my life I call my stuff phase. I thought the accumulation of great stuff would make me happy. So I bought a beautiful home, I bought beautiful cars, I bought a nice boat, I bought a small private plane, you know, the stuff we all have. And lo and behold, in phase one of my life, with all of that stuff, happiness didn't arrive. Happiness wasn't in any of those things. And he said, I'm a pretty smart guy. So I quickly moved to phase two of my life, which I called better stuff. So I bought a luxury home. I bought luxury cars. I bought a yacht. I got rid of that little boat. I bought a yacht. I traded in that little plane. I bought a fully customized jet. And I thought, living in that house and flying around the world in that jet, surely happiness arrives now. And shockingly, in phase two of my life, happiness wasn't in any of those things either. Again, being a smart guy, I quickly moved to phase three of his life, which he called different stuff. And he and two of his friends purchased the Seattle Seahawks NFL football franchise for $1 billion. I don't understand $1 billion. I'm sure you guys have that kind of money. I don't get it. $1 billion purchase. And he's thinking, if I'm in the luxury suites, if I'm on ESPN television all the time and running around with these athletes, you know, hobnobbing with the rich and famous, in addition to all the other successful businesses I've got going on, surely happiness arrives there. And we're in phase three of his life. He's running the Seahawks and all of his other businesses, and happiness hasn't shown up yet. And he gets a phone call. And the call's from a friend of his, an associate that runs a foundation. And the foundation is focused on delivering wheelchairs to third world countries, to children who have stepped on landmines or been otherwise disabled. And they're asking him to go on a trip with them. And he understands the game. They're a foundation and he has money. And they want him to go on this trip and have a great experience, to do some great work, really make a difference in the lives of these kids and come back and write them a check. And that's exactly what happens. He goes. He has a great experience. Does some great work for these kids, comes back, writes a healthy check to this foundation. We're still in phase three of his life, still running all of his successful businesses, but happiness just hasn't shown up with any of them. Finally, a few months later, he gets a second call from the foundation. They're smart enough to ask him to go on another trip, and he does. And he has a great experience. He does some great work. Really changes some lives. Comes back, writes another check to the foundation. Similar thing, though. Nothing is impacting the heart. Still in phase three, doing all this stuff. No happiness. It wasn't until the third trip that Ken goes on with this organization that something happens that informs you and I. Third trip, they go to South Africa. And he's doing what he's been doing with in other countries. He's assembling wheelchairs and placing children in them. And he's just finished a larger wheelchair. He picks up this damaged 11-year-old boy and places him in his new wheelchair. And as he turns to walk away to assemble the next chair, this boy reaches out and grabs a hold of his leg and won't let go. Now the boy is talking in his native tongue as fast as he can. Ken can't understand the language. The boy's got tears in his eye. And he's taken aback by the whole thing. Ken's looking around for help. Finally gets the attention of a young man who has both languages, signals for him to come over. When he comes over, he listens intently to what the boy is saying. And then he just looks up and he says, Ken, this boy is just telling you he doesn't want you to leave you. He wants you to stay longer. He wants you to stay long enough so he can memorize your face. So when he meets you again in heaven, he can thank you again for bringing him his new wheelchair. And in that instant, Baring says, I moved to phase 4 of my life, which I call service. Oh, it isn't about me and accumulation. It's about them and contribution. And happiness arrived instantly and has never left. He flew home and started his own wheelchair foundation and other foundations that is in the midst of giving his billions of dollars away. Having discovered what Abraham Maslow and others discovered at the end of their lives, that it isn't about getting to the top of some self-actualization pyramid at all. It's about living to make a contribution to the well-being of others. We're here to serve. We're here to lead. We're here to change, to make a difference. Isn't it interesting? All the success in the world did not cause happiness to arrive with Ken. But one authentic moment of appreciation changed everything. Because that's its power. That's what it does. And when people are excited about it, things change. See, when you're excited about some great purpose, some extraordinary project, your thoughts do break their bonds. Your mind does transcend limitations. Your consciousness does expand in every direction. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents inside of you come alive. And you discover yourself and your people and your company to be greater by far than you ever dreamt them to be. And the people inside this company will do great work because they want to, because great work is the kind of work that makes a difference people love. And it's appreciated people who love making a difference, and they will make a difference for you. Place them in a position to succeed, provide all of the conditions necessary for growth. They will blow you away with what they have the ability to do. Thanks. Appreciate your time.